Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Zachary Horwitz? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, including the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Zachary Joseph Horwitz was born on December 5, 1986, in Berkeley, California. He went by the name Zach. When he was 10 years old, his parents divorced, and Zach moved to Tampa, Florida, with his mother. After his first year of high school, they moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Zach's mother married a wealthy manufacturing executive. In 2005, Zach graduated from high school and studied psychology at Indiana University, Bloomington. He met a woman named Mallory, and they became romantically involved. After graduating from college, Zach and Mallory moved to Chicago, Illinois, where Zach took classes at another college. He dropped out less than a year later. In 2011, Zach opened a juice bar called Fuel. He told his friends that a famous billionaire was interested in making a $30 million investment in the company. Zach gave himself the title of CEO and a salary of $250,000 a year. During this time, Zach took acting classes and seemed to be more interested in pursuing a career in Hollywood than running a juice bar. After just a few months of operating the business, Zach told people that the investment had fallen through and the company closed. Zach falsely claimed that he had a job offer in Los Angeles. It was from a venture capital firm who wanted him to work in their entrepreneur outreach program. Interestingly, Zach said that the same person who was going to invest the money in the juice bar is the person who made the job offer. On December 31, 2011, Zach and Mallory started their drive across the country to Los Angeles. After arriving, Zach pretended to work for the venture capital firm. Eventually, he told Mallory that he wanted to pursue a career in acting. Using the stage name Zach Avery, he tried to find roles in movies and on television, but it was difficult because he was a horrible actor. At this point, Zach came up with a solution. He started his own production company called 1 in a Million Productions. The mission of the company was to produce low-budget movies that Zach could act in. Over the next few years, Zach was in a series of awful movies, although he did have an uncredited role as an extra in the 2014 movie Fury, which depicted the ordeal of an M4 Sherman tank crew during the Western Allied invasion of Germany. People who worked with Zach and watched his movies found him to be untalented, boring, and undistinguished. His acting skills were so deficient, they didn't understand how he made a living. People assumed that Zach must have had wealthy friends and family money. In 2013, Zach developed an investment arrangement which involved his production company. He told investors that he was going to buy the rights to several low-budget movies and lease those rights to the Latin American divisions of various streaming platforms for distribution. This was possible because he had a business partner who had worked many years at 20th Century Fox. Zach convinced a friend of his named Jack, who lived in Chicago and had been involved in the failed juice bar, to invest $37,000 into one of these low-budget movies. He promised to pay Jack a $9,000 return in 90 days. Jack was reluctant due to the bad experience with the juice bar, but ultimately invested the money. As promised, Zach paid the return, leaving Jack sold on the idea that Zach was the real deal. During that same year, 2013, Zach and Mallory had an extravagant wedding at the Four Seasons in Los Angeles. Jack attended the wedding and was amazed at how successful his friend was. When he returned to Chicago, Jack met with other people who knew Zach from college and told them about the amazing investment opportunity. The friends decided to invest as well, and they were pleasantly surprised. In October of 2014, Zach transformed his investment arrangement into a Ponzi scheme. He used investor money to pay returns. All Ponzi schemes are destined to fail because there are a finite number of investors. At some point, it becomes a mathematical impossibility to keep up with the payments. Essentially, the way Zach operated was to ask for money to buy the rights to a particular movie. He He would then issue a promissory note indicating he would repay the money within a certain amount of time. In addition, there would be a return on the investment, which ranged from 25 to 40%. Some of the deals were for thousands of dollars, others were for over $1 million. Zach did acquire the rights to a few movies, but the vast majority of the deals never happened. He fabricated official-looking documents from large streaming services like HBO to convince investors that he was really closing these deals. Zach's friends, of course, did not know about the Ponzi scheme, and their enthusiasm ran wild as massive and unrealistic returns kept flowing their way. In order to get involved in more deals, the friends started taking out loans. 4 of Zach's college friends even formed a company called JJMT Capital. Soon they were recruiting other investors, including family members. The returns on the deals continued to be substantial. Everybody was making money. Other people started investing as well, including those who had not been friends with Zach before he moved to California. Zach had obtained a large amount of money through his Ponzi scheme, but he still had not achieved his dream of being a successful actor. In 2017, he and a filmmaker co-founded some type of company that invested in movies. Zach dumped about $20 million into 8 different films over the next 4 years. As part of his deal, he was given acting roles in 4 of the movies. In one movie titled Last Moment of Clarity, he had a leading role. At the end of 2019, Zach started getting behind on his payments to investors. He came up with a number of excuses. He said the streaming services were running behind in terms of paying him, and COVID-19 was disrupting his business. But over a year later, in February 2021, he was reported to the FBI. The investigation was brief because Zach's criminal activity was blatantly obvious. From 2014 to 2021, Zach had raised over $690 million. He defrauded investors out of $227 million. On April 6, 2021, Zach was arrested and charged with 6 counts of wire fraud, 5 counts of securities fraud, and 2 counts of aggravated identity theft. His wife Mallory filed for divorce right away, saying that Zach was not the person she believed he was. On October 4, 2021, Zach pleaded guilty to 1 count of securities fraud. 4 months later, he was sentenced to the maximum of 20 years in federal prison. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Some people have noted that the investors in this case should have realized that the returns that Zach promised were not sustainable. During a time when interest rates were very low, Zach was telling people they could get up to a 40% return. It just didn't make any sense at all and was clearly a scam. Some of the investors indicated that Zach was extremely convincing. He had the ability to be confident under stress and would often imply to investors that he didn't need their money. He was willing to walk away from any deal. Like many con artists, Zach understood that pulling back from a deal is the best way to draw a victim into a deal. This behavior made Zach appear as though he was truly in a position of power and was not desperate. Whenever investors would present questions to Zach about his arrangement with these streaming services or other companies, he supplied them with answers they believed were plausible. Also, the fake documents and emails he produced looked like they were legitimate. Even outside the ludicrous return that Zach was promising, investors had many clues that Zach was a con artist. For example, he would answer all their questions, but he would also tell them never to go directly to the companies he did business with. He claimed that having investors speak to Netflix, HBO, or Sony could destroy his business. Item number 2. As I mentioned, Zachary collected $690 million from investors and came up short by $227 million. This is a tremendous amount of money to vanish in this type of scam. Perhaps Zach hid some of the money hoping to access it after he finished his prison sentence, but the leading theory is that he simply burned through the money by living a lavish lifestyle. Here are just a few examples of his ridiculous spending. Zach and his wife lived in a $5.7 million mansion on Bolton Road, not far from Beverly Hills. The mansion had a wine cellar stocked with 1,000 bottles of wine. It also had a screening room, which could easily be converted into a torture chamber by playing a movie featuring Zach attempting to act. When Zach was with his friends, he liked to show off in a generous way. One time he left a $2,000 tip at a pizza restaurant. Zach paid $706,000 for a celebrity interior decorator. He flew on private jets and took trips on yachts. This cost about $345,000. He paid $174,000 for party consulting services. Trips to Las Vegas casinos and nightclubs cost him $136,000. It was not unusual for Zach to wear $500 t-shirts, and he paid $54,000 for a luxury watch subscription service. At the time he was arrested, Zach owned very little. Pretty much everything he had was leased. Item number 3. Many people who act in movies do not have as much talent as audiences would prefer. Acting is one of those careers that is notorious for requiring physical attractiveness, or at least distinctiveness. At the same time, it is very forgiving as far as the possession of acting talent. Even so, actors with zero talent tend to attract ridicule and condemnation. Zach was one of these people. One former colleague said he was the worst actor I've ever worked with. He went on to say that sharing a scene with Zach was like interacting with a banana. That statement is highly offensive to bananas. A director who worked with Zach said it was like dealing with a dead horse. One critic that reviewed Zach's movie, Last Moment of Clarity, said Zach delivered a dull and unappealing performance. In a curious twist, some people believe that Zach's only convincing performance was when he played a sociopath in a movie called The Gateway. Item number 4. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Zach was self-centered, excitement-seeking, attention-seeking, deceptive, manipulative, overconfident, remorseless, grandiose, irresponsible, falsely believed he was special, had a sense of entitlement, and lacked empathy. His defense argued that he may have had bipolar disorder and substance use problems. Even if he did, this does not explain his criminal behavior. His crimes were not related to mania, depression, or substances. Rather, they were carefully planned and executed. Zach liked being the center of attention and wanted to be a famous actor. His lack of empathy made this career choice challenging. Many actors rely on their ability to understand the emotions of the character they are trying to play. Zach couldn't do this, so his performances were flat, robotic, uninspired, atrocious, and unconvincing. The desire to be an actor was so strong for Zach, he tried to force it into existence. He started companies to raise money and to promote his acting career. Through building a Ponzi scheme, Zach perpetuated a crime against investors. Through showcasing his acting skills, Zach perpetuated a crime against humanity. Zach was able to manipulate some of the investors by extending what I call the shield of narcissism. This is when the traits that protect the ego of a narcissist extend temporarily to other people. Zach made his friends feel special, like they had broken into Hollywood. They had penetrated inside the movie business. They were now in an exclusive world and therefore had access to fantastical and improbable investment returns. No one suspected Zach because they didn't think he was smart enough to perpetuate fraud, and because he smelled terrific. By harnessing the power of cologne, aftershave, or deodorant, Zach was able to steal over $200 million. Now moving to my final thoughts. In prison, Zach started a blog. He wrote about how he was obsessed with the belief that a superior life existed just beyond his grasp. His behavior was blamed on unresolved internal insecurities, which forced him to believe his fabricated life was a reality. Zach mentioned how he was in denial and stated that prison is a journey of mending wounds. Zach has a profound lack of insight, but like many con artists, tries to string together words to make it sound like he understands himself. Just like Zach's acting, his attempt at insight is unconvincing. Those are my thoughts in the case of Zachary Horwitz. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.